"You shouldn't be here," Uduak's voice came sharp and low behind her. Chinasa turned slowly. "I'm not doing anything wrong." Uduak stepped closer, her smile tight. "You're always in the way. Your father loves you too much, and that makes you a problem." Chinasa blinked. "What?" Chinasa tried to bypass her to escape, but she pushed her backward. Chinasa lost her balance, and before she knew it, she was in the water. She screamed so loud, it caught the attention of everyone. Kelechi's heart stopped when he heard her voice. He ran to the back immediately. "What happened?" he asked. Chinasa, she jumped into the water to kill herself. Without thinking twice, Kelechi dove right into the sea. Uduak shouted, "No!" She did not think for once that he would do that because she knew he wasn't a good swimmer. Seconds passed gradually into minutes with no sign of them. It was barely past 6 a.m. when Mrs. Uduak, Chinasa's stepmother, shouted her name from the living room like she had a nightmare about her. Chinasa jumped from her bed and sprinted to the living room in fear. Will she be insulted, flogged, or mocked again? This had been her life since the death of her father who shielded her. She was just 2 years old when her mother, Amara, died tragically. Amara was beautiful and the best friend of Uduak. Amara, Uduak, and Kelechi all grew up in the same community. Kelechi was the only son of a prominent rich man in the town, and his life was completely different from theirs. As they grew older, Kelechi would invite them on his boat cruise. He knew how to have a good time and carried both ladies along. Amara and Uduak both admired Kelechi, more like a crush, but Uduak was more open about her feelings. It was obvious in the way she threw herself on Kelechi. She would give him hugs, followed by kisses on the cheek. She openly confesses her feelings about him to almost everyone. "This is my husband," she would say jokingly, even though Kelechi never reciprocated the feelings back to her. Meanwhile, Amara would simply smile from her side as she watched her best friend flirt with him. It came as a shock to Uduak when Kelechi showed interest of marriage to Amara out of the blue. She was hurt, devastated, and felt betrayed by her friend. "How can she do this to me?" she thought within herself. Kelechi and Amara did not waste time. They immediately got married, and of course Uduak was her bridesmaid. The day of the wedding, Uduak acted like the happiest. She wore a smile all through the wedding, but when she got home that night, she couldn't sleep. She cried and cried and cried. Several thoughts was going through her head. Why didn't he choose me? He knew I love him so much. Amara never showed any interest in him. Is it because I'm not Igbo, but I'm even more beautiful than her? She cried herself to sleep. However, despite her hurt, she pretended to be a good friend to Amara so she could still have access to Kelechi. She was there for every big occasion and even the small ones. Baby shower, she was there. She came with the most gift on Chinasa's first birthday. "Please let me spoil my goddaughter," she said to Amara. She anticipated every opportunity to talk to Kelechi or just to see his smile. Kelechi felt a bit uncomfortable with her presence. He wasn't happy with the flirty eyes she still sent his way when Amara isn't watching. He tried to talk to Amara about it, but her innocent heart couldn't see through the mask of friendship she wore. She made up excuses for her. Then it happened one sad day. Kelechi was on a business trip when he received a devastating call from the hospital. Amara and Chinasa was involved in a knock-and-run situation. They had stopped by a shopping mall to get a few things. Just as Amara stepped out of her vehicle, a car from nowhere hit her and ran away. The driver was not identified, and the CCTV in the area could not catch the plate number. Kelechi left everything and ran back immediately. By the time he got to the hospital, it was too late. The doctors could not do anything, and Amara was gone. Kelechi broke down. He was about to go mad. And of course, you guessed right, Uduak was there to sympathize, to mourn and comfort the family. She consoled the man and took care of Chinasa. Kelechi tried to be strong, but he couldn't. This was a woman he had loved since he was a child. He settled into drinking alcohol both day and night. It was a means of escaping his thoughts. It was like 3 months after the burial of Amara, and Kelechi was slowly getting himself, though he still drank himself to bed. Uduak, as usual, came to check up on them, but this time she also had another mission. When it was getting late in the night, she went into Kelechi's room, put on the nightwear of Amara, wore her perfume and gently tapped drunken Kelechi. "Amara, is that you?" he mumbled beneath his voice. "I've missed you, Amara," he said. "I've missed you too," she whispered. Then she kissed him, and before he knew it, he slept with her. The morning when he woke up, he was ashamed of himself. He apologized and said he was sorry. She went back to her apartment that morning, giggling within her. However, since that incident, Kelechi refused to take a sip of alcohol. He focused all his attention on his beautiful 2-year-old daughter and told Uduak there was no need for her to come around again. 3 months had passed when Uduak came with the surprise news. "I'm pregnant, Kelechi." "What? Are you joking? How can I joke with something like this?" "I am pregnant for you," she said as she broke down in tears. "I don't know what to do," she said amidst tears. Kelechi hurried to her side. "It's fine. I'll do the right thing by you, I promise. Please stop crying." And just like that, Kelechi married Uduak. The wedding was simple. Although few whisper and gossip flew around, most people came to the conclusion that he married her for the sake of Chinasa. Uduak wasn't a bad wife. She loved Kelechi, and eventually Kelechi learned to love her as well. But then she secretly maltreated Chinasa. Every time she looked at her, all she could see was Amara, the woman she got rejected for. All the hatred she harbored for Amara was secretly and stylishly poured on her. She didn't make it so obvious for Kelechi to notice. And it became worse as Chinasa grew older. She completely turned the head of Kelechi against his daughter with false information. She stole money. She is lazy, disrespectful, and anything she could think of that seemed reasonable. And Kelechi not being around made everything she said believable. Chinasa got used to it eventually. She grew up in a setting where Inyobong was treated as royalty with their father's money, while she got what was left in the pot. In her own house, barely 13 years old, she was the one doing the entire house chores. When she tries to complain to her dad, he wasn't listening and was barely around. Then the worst happened to her on Inyobong's 10th birthday. For God knows why, Uduak suggested that they throw the birthday party on a yacht. "It's been Inyobong's wish," she said. The yacht danced gently on the river, decorated with balloons and ribbons in shades of pink and gold. Inyobong twirled in her birthday dress, grinning as friends cheered. "Happy birthday, Inyi," echoed again and again. But at the back of the yacht, away from the laughter, Chinasa leaned against the rail, watching the water below ripple under the setting sun. She was quiet. She never truly felt like part of the family, not with the way she was being treated. She couldn't remember when last a birthday party was thrown for her. "You shouldn't be here," Uduak's voice came sharp and low behind her. Chinasa turned slowly. "I'm not doing anything wrong." Uduak stepped closer, her smile tight. "You're always in the way. Your father loves you too much, and that makes you a problem." Chinasa blinked. "What?" Chinasa tried to bypass her to escape, but she pushed her backward. Chinasa lost her balance, and before she knew it, she was in the water. She screamed so loud, it caught the attention of everyone. Kelechi's heart stopped when he heard her voice. He ran to the back immediately. "What happened?" he asked. "Chinasa, she jumped into the water to kill herself." Without thinking twice, Kelechi dove right into the sea. Uduak shouted, "No!" She did not think for once that he would do that because she knew he wasn't a good swimmer. Seconds passed gradually into minutes with no sign of them. Then his hand rose, gripping Chinasa's wrist. He pushed her upward. Someone on the boat reached down and pulled her in, coughing and shivering. But Kelechi, his arms now limp, began to sink. "Get him out," Uduak shouted. One man dove in, but it was too late. He was gone, swallowed by the same river that had just returned his daughter. When Chinasa was revived, she sat on the deck, drenched and shaking. Her teeth chattered, arms wrapped tightly around herself. But her eyes were fixed on the water where her father had disappeared. The spot was still rippling, empty. People were crying, some were on the phone with emergency services, but the loudest voice came from Uduak. And it was pointed at her. "You did this," Uduak hissed, storming toward the soaked girl. "You caused this, Chinasa." Chinasa looked up slowly, her lips quivering. "If you had stayed with the others, if you had partied like a normal child, your father would still be alive." Uduak screamed, voice rising above the murmurs of the stunned guests. But you, she wanted to say. She pushed her, but she was too scared. She swallowed hard as she watched the life guides go in and out of the water, searching for her daddy. Oh please, Uduak spat. Why were you even alone at the back of the boat? Why do you always act like you don't belong here? Is it because you hate your sister? You've never accepted Inyobong, always sulking, always brooding, always making everything about you. Uduak stepped closer, jabbing her finger at the girl's chest. Well, congratulations, Chinasa. You've ruined her birthday. You've killed your father. Are you happy now? Her words cut deeper than the river's depths. Chinasa broke. She collapsed to the floor, sobbing as the crowd watched in stunned silence. After the burial of Kelechi, Chinasa life turned for the worse, and the entire empire was now in the custody of Uduak. Chinasa was made to change school. She was enrolled in a public school close to the house and forced to provide for herself before she could eat. It happened very early in the morning one Saturday. Barely past 6 a.m. when Mrs. Uduak shouted her name from the living room like she had a nightmare about her. Chinasa jumped from her bed and sprinted to the living room in fear. Will she be insulted, flogged, or mocked again? Why are you still sleeping? Seems you've become too comfortable and lazy. It ends today. She handed her a sum of 20,000 naira. This is what is left of your father's money and this house. I'm not going to chase you away so the world won't call me a witch. But you're only going to be living here and earning your place by maintaining the house. The day you fail to do your work, you'll find your load on the street. She handed her the 20,000 naira, told her to figure out herself. This is all your father left behind for you, she said coldly. Chinasa was just 14 years old when she had to figure out what she will eat or starve. She used half of the money to buy banana and started selling after her class. And she found favor in the eyes of people. She would get tips and customer patronized her. Little by little she was getting money and surviving. She tried saving for her college while she sponsored herself throughout the remaining part of her secondary school. People around knew her as the beautiful banana girl. One hot Wednesday afternoon, Chinasa, now 21 years of age, balanced a tray of ripe bananas on her head as she walked through the familiar streets, calling out to customers with a soft, humble tone. Banana, fresh banana, sweet and ripe. She had just made a sale and was wiping sweat from her brow when a shiny black car slowed to a halt beside her. The tinted window rolled down halfway, and there was Inyobong, dressed in a designer outfit with loud makeup and an even louder laugh. She had just returned from the university. Well, Inyobong sneered, pulling down her sunglasses. Look who we have here, the banana princess of Lagos. Chinasa froze. She knew that voice, knew that tone, but she kept her composure. Inyobong stepped out of the car, crossing her arms as she leaned against the door. You know, this really suits you, she said with mock pity. Banana seller by day, orphan by fate. I should take a picture for my throwback Thursdays. What a fall from grace. Are you sure you're ever going to save enough to go to school? You know school isn't meant for anyone. You should consider just getting married. Before Chinasa could respond, a thin, weary man in ragged clothes approached timidly. His feet were dusty, and he held his stomach like it was caving in. Please, he said softly, directing his voice at Inyobong first. I haven't eaten today. Anything you can spare, just something small. Inyobong curled her lip in disgust, looking him over like a stain on her shoe. Are you mad? Do I look like your mother? She snapped. Get lost, you stink. Or better still, go talk to your fellow poor rat. She turned back to her car, fanning her face. The man's face dropped, his pride crumbled in the middle of the street. He was about to walk away, humiliated, when Chinasa stepped forward. I'm sorry about that, she said gently, removing a few bananas from her tray. Please take this. It's not much, but it should help. The man looked at her, stunned. God bless you, he whispered, tears rising in his eyes as he accepted the bananas and sank to the floor by the gutter to eat them. He didn't even peel carefully, just devoured like someone whose belly had known nothing but air. Inyobong scoffed loudly and shook her head. You both deserve each other. See, you should consider marrying him. she said mockingly as she stepped back into her car. "You'd make a great couple, king and queen of the streets." The tires screeched as she sped off, her laughter echoing behind her like a slap in the face. Chinasa turned to the man, her heart aching, not for herself but for the way people had forgotten what kindness meant. "I'm really sorry," she said again. "Please don't let her words stay with you." The man looked up, still chewing slowly, his eyes shining with gratitude. "You're the one who should be sorry?" he asked. "No. You're special. Don't ever forget that." He stood and gently placed one hand over his heart. "Thank you, not just for the food, but for reminding me that there are still good people left." Then he walked away quietly, disappearing into the crowd like a shadow returning to dust. Chinasa stood in silence for a moment, her eyes lingering on the path he took. She didn't know it yet, but that brief act of kindness had just sparked a chain of events that would change her life forever. The next day, Chinasa was already at her corner near the old supermarket, her tray neatly arranged with golden bananas. Her voice was low but sweet as she called to passers-by. "Banana, sweet and fresh banana." Then she noticed someone walking toward her, familiar but unexpected. It was the same man from the previous day. His clothes were cleaner this time, still plain, still worn, but his posture had changed. He held a small folded note in his hand and a determined look on his face. "Sister," he said gently, stopping just in front of her. "I came to pay for the banana you gave me yesterday. Please, I couldn't sleep knowing I ate without paying." Chinasa looked at him and smiled, wiping her hands on a cloth. "You don't owe me anything," she said softly. "I gave you out of kindness, not as a seller." The man insisted, stretching out the money again. "Please, even if it's small. I want to." She shook her head. "No, I'd rather you use that money to get a good meal today. Besides," she hesitated, then picked 2 bananas from her tray and handed them to him. "Have these. My treat again." The man stared at her, eyes wide. "Why are you so kind to someone like me?" Chinasa lowered her gaze, her voice a little shaky. "Because I know what it feels like to be invisible. And sometimes I just need someone to talk to. You can sit with me, if you're not in a hurry." He smiled. It was a slow, grateful kind of smile. "I'd like that." They found a shaded spot on the sidewalk where she usually rested during long days. As they sat, he finally told her his name. "I'm Ibuka." "Chinasa," she replied, offering her hand. From that day, it became a quiet routine. Ibuka would stop by daily, sometimes showing up before she even arrived. He'd help her arrange the bananas neatly on the tray. On slow days, he carried the tray for her as they walked, laughing, talking, and selling. He never asked for more bananas. He just stayed. They talked about small things, the weather, the noise of the market, the rude customers, and sometimes deeper things, like pain and loss. Chinasa told him a little about her father. Not everything, but enough to let him know her heart had known sorrow. Ibuka listened, truly listened. People around began to notice. The quiet banana girl had a companion now. And while some teased, calling them banana couple, Chinasa didn't mind. For the first time in years, she felt seen. And though she didn't know where Ibuka came from or why he seemed to always wander alone, Chinasa only cared that he stayed. One day after Ibuka and Chinasa had just finished selling out for the day, they sat beneath their usual tree, sipping cold sachet water. Their banter was light, as always, but there was a flicker of something deeper in Ibuka's eyes that day, something unsettled. Chinasa caught it. "You're quiet today," she said, gently nudging his arm. Ibuka looked at her, his expression soft but firm. "Chinasa," he began. Her heart skipped. "I don't have everything figured out. I don't have a mansion or degrees or a family name anyone knows. But I know what peace feels like, and I've only known it since I met you." Chinasa's hands stilled. "I want to marry you." Her eyes widened. "What?" "I said I want to marry you," he repeated, reaching for her hand. "Not just help you carry bananas. I want to carry life with you. The good, the bad, all of it." Chinasa's lips parted to object, to ask questions, to say no, but instead something in her chest loosened. Her fears faded like mist before the morning sun. There was no booming voice from heaven, but there was peace. Quiet, solid peace. She blinked slowly and nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." News of the engagement spread like wildfire through the neighborhood, but when Ibuka came to see Uduak for formal introduction, her reaction was as cold and bitter as ever. Uduak sat on her worn leather chair, legs crossed, a mocking smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "So this is the man," she said, glancing at Ibuka with a sneer. "Well, Chinasa, since you couldn't be useful enough to earn a degree like my daughter, maybe this is your destiny, marrying your fellow roadmate." Chinasa stood quietly beside Ibuka, her eyes on the floor. Uduak folded her arms. "Before I'll even consider this marriage, you'll need to pay a bride price of 2 million naira. Think of it as a test of your capacity, young man. I'll use the money to hire a proper maid that can replace her." She chuckled. "I know your type. That money alone should scare you off." Ibuka didn't flinch. He nodded once. "Okay." "Okay?" Uduak scoffed. "That's all? Do you even know how much I said?" "I'll bring it," he replied simply, "in 1 week." Uduak burst into laughter. "Please, you better prepare your heartbreak speech now, Chinasa." But exactly 1 week later, Ibuka returned. He didn't arrive in a fancy car or wear a suit, but in a small envelope wrapped carefully in nylon, he presented the full sum, 2 million naira in crisp bundles. Uduak's mouth fell open. She counted it herself, twice, then a third time in disbelief. How did you? She stammered. "I said I'd bring it," Ibuka said calmly. "I did." Uduak had no words and no excuse to stop the wedding. She had set a trap that failed to catch her prey. And just like that, Chinasa was free. Free to marry the man who saw her not as a burden, but as a treasure. What Chinasa didn't know was that her life was about to take a turn she could never have imagined. All those afternoons she spent selling bananas by the roadside with Ibuka beside her. He would often ask with a curious smile, "If you had all the money in the world, how would your dream wedding look like?" And she would laugh, sometimes shyly, sometimes with sparkles in her eyes, and say things like, "I want a dress that sweeps the floor like a princess. Golden chairs at the reception, oh, and a cake taller than me." She would describe flowers, music, the kind of dance she'd do, and even what she wanted her first kiss as a bride to feel like. Ibuka would listen silently, smiling, never saying much. Just listening. Of course, she never took the question seriously. She thought it was just one of those harmless daydream games they played to pass time. And when she agreed to marry Ibuka, she knew she wouldn't have any of those things. Until the day before the wedding, Chinasa was inside sweeping the small living room when she heard a sudden commotion outside. The sound of a powerful engine pulling into the compound. She dropped her broom and peeked out the window. A sleek, black Rolls-Royce had just rolled to a stop. Inyobong, who had come home earlier to supervise the small wedding preparations, rushed out, her eyes already gleaming with curiosity. She swung her hips as she approached the driver stepping out in a fine black suit. "Yes?" Inyobong asked with a flirty smile. "Who are you looking for?" The driver didn't even glance at her. "Miss Chinasa, if you don't mind," he said professionally. Inyobong blinked. "What?" She let out a mocking laugh. "You must be confused. Chinasa is my stepsister. Her groom is Ibuka, the banana seller, the beggar." Just then, Chinasa stepped outside cautiously, wiping her hands on her wrapper. "I'm Chinasa," she said, puzzled. "Is there a problem?" The driver smiled and gave a polite nod. "Your groom sent me, ma. I've been instructed to drive you to your hotel suite for the night." Chinasa and Inyobong stood there, stunned. "Hotel suite?" Chinasa echoed. "Excuse me?" Inyobong scoffed, stepping forward. "You mean Ibuka sent you? Ibuka the beggar?" "You are correct," the driver replied. "Mr. Ibuka Darlington." Everything paused. Chinasa's heart stumbled in her chest. "Ibuka? Darlington?" "Yes, ma. Son of the late Chief Darlington. And your groom." Inyobong's jaw dropped. Chinasa couldn't breathe for a moment. The same Ibuka who had helped her sell bananas. The man she thought was just a kind-hearted drifter. But even with the confusion whirling in her head, she didn't resist. Slowly, silently, she followed the driver toward the car, her steps unsure but steady. As the door closed behind her and the car glided out of the compound, Chinasa stared ahead, her world spinning in quiet disbelief. Who exactly had she fallen in love with? And why had he chosen to hide it until now? They soon pulled up in front of Eden Crest Hotel, the finest, most luxurious hotel in the city. A place she had only seen in magazines and posters from afar. The car came to a gentle stop. Before she could even step out, the hotel doors swung open. A line of well-dressed staff stood on both sides of a red carpet, rolled out just for her. The ground was delicately covered in rose petals, soft music drifted from invisible speakers, calming, romantic, rich with meaning. It felt like walking into a dream. Chinasa stepped out slowly, barefoot on the petals, her eyes wide in disbelief. The staff bowed respectfully. "Welcome, Mum," they chorused in unison. Her mouth parted, but no words came. One of the women gently led her by the hand. "Please, this way." They entered the hotel, climbed in a glass elevator, and moments later she was ushered into the presidential suite, so grand it stole her breath. The floor shimmered. The walls were adorned with fresh flowers. A dining table was set with her favorite foods. She recognized them immediately. But what truly stopped her was what lay on the bed. A wedding gown. Elegant, flowing, regal. It had the exact details she had once described to Ibuka during one of their chats. Right beside it was a small white envelope. With trembling hands, Chinasa opened it. In Ibuka's handwriting it read, "My love, I meant every word I ever said to you. You've given me more peace than all the wealth in the world ever could. I wanted to know if you would love me for who I am, not for what I have. And you did. Completely. Tomorrow I'll explain everything. But tonight rest like the queen that you are, your groom, Ibuka." Back at home, Inyobong slammed the door behind her, pacing the living room like a lioness in a cage. "She got into a Rolls-Royce," she shouted, her voice sharp with fury. And the driver said, "Ibuka Darlington." Uduak sat slowly, her face pale, her fingers clenched. "Darlington?" she echoed, as if the name hurt to say. "As in, Chief Darlington? That Darlington?" "Yes, Mummy," Inyobong cried, "the one with estates in Lekki, Banana Island, Abuja, everywhere. The one with offshore accounts and private jets." Uduak was quiet for a long moment, her pride twisted into knots inside her chest. "This must be a prank," she said finally, standing to compose herself. "Maybe it's staged. There's no way. That beggar we saw in rags could be that Ibuka." The wedding day arrived like a scene from a royal fairy tale. The venue was none other than the Crystal Grove, an exclusive luxury event center, nestled in the heart of the city where only the wealthiest held their ceremonies. Chandeliers sparkled like captured stars above, and the entire garden was transformed into a sea of elegance. Inside the grand venue were dignitaries, senators, CEOs, foreign diplomats, fashion moguls, and even a few celebrities. The media was present, flashes popping every second. Every eye sparkled with curiosity and admiration. And seated quietly among the crowd, in their modest lace outfits, were Inyobong and Uduak, frozen in disbelief. This is not real," Uduak whispered through clenched teeth. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her purse. How is this happening?" Inyobong couldn't speak. Her eyes scanned the venue, the gold, the elegance, the people she had only ever seen on TV. And they were all gathered for Chinasa. She couldn't breathe. Then came the moment. The music changed. Everyone turned to look at the entrance. And there she was, Chinasa, stepping slowly through the arch, glowing like something out of a dream. Her gown was unlike anything they had ever seen, sparkling, royal, flowing like liquid light. Her veil glimmered softly with every step, and the bouquet in her hand was made of white orchids and baby's breath wrapped in satin. Gasps rippled through the audience. Even Chinasa herself could hardly believe what was happening. Her fingers trembled, her lips parted in awe. How did I get here, she thought. But then she looked ahead and saw him. Ibuka. Standing tall, regal, dressed in a white tuxedo trimmed with gold, and he was smiling. That smile steadied her heart. It reminded her who she was walking toward. The crowd stood, phones rose, the violins swelled, and Chinasa walked, slowly, gracefully, her eyes fixed only on the man who had seen her value long before the world did. At the back, Uduak's knuckles had gone pale from how tightly she held her handbag. Inyobong had stopped blinking altogether. This should be me, she muttered. She was nothing, selling bananas by the road. But Uduak couldn't answer. She had swallowed too much pride to speak. Then came the priest's voice. If there's anyone here who has a reason why this couple should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now, or forever hold your peace. The crowd held their breath. And then Inyobong's hand flew into the air. Gasps echoed through the hall as she stood up sharply. I do, she shouted. All heads turned, including Chinasa's. Ibuka's expression hardened, and the silence was deafening. You cannot marry this man, Inyobong's voice rang out like thunder through the elegant hall. Her heels clicked sharply as she stepped into the aisle, her finger pointed straight at Chinasa. Gasps rippled through the stunned congregation. I won't let you marry him, she screamed again, her voice cracking with rage. He's supposed to be my husband. If you don't end this wedding ceremony right now, I swear, I'll expose everything. Chinasa stood frozen, her hand still clutching her bouquet, her face pale beneath her veil. Inyobong turned to the crowd now, playing to the audience like it was a courtroom. You all don't know what she did, she said, trembling. This man, he begged me for money one day. He came to me first. He spoke to me first. That day by the roadside, he was mine. People began to whisper. And what did she do? Inyobong continued, her face contorted. She snatched him right from under me, just because she gave him bananas and played the pity card, husband snatcher. Then, like a dark echo, Uduak rose from her seat beside her daughter, adjusting her gel with disgust. Yes, she said, what makes you think I would stand here and allow this disgrace? My daughter deserves better. Over my dead body will this wedding continue? The atmosphere was heavy now. All eyes were on the couple. Chinasa's hands began to tremble. Her heart thundered in her chest. Her legs wavered. But then, Ibuka touched her cheeks and comforted her. You're safe now, he said. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Ibuka held Chinasa's hand tightly, his jaw clenched. Then he turned slowly to Inyobong and Uduak, his voice cold and controlled. I didn't want to do this here. Not today, he said, his eyes locked on theirs. But since you've decided to ruin your sister's wedding, the truth must come out. He raised his hand slightly, signaling toward the entrance. Two uniformed guards stepped forward, guiding an older man into the hall. Gasps echoed across the room again. The man looked nervous, weathered by guilt but determined. As soon as Uduak saw him, her face went pale. She staggered back, clutching her gel, then turned her face away in shame. No? She whispered under her breath. The man stepped up to the front, taking the microphone gently from the priest. He swallowed hard, then spoke. My name is Fidelis, he began, his voice trembling. Years ago, I was a private driver, and I'm Inyobong's real father. The crowd gasped again. Inyobong stood frozen, her lips parted, her body rigid. I was there the day Amara died, Fidelis continued. It wasn't an accident. Uduak paid me a large sum of money to drive to that plaza and hit her. She knew Amara and her daughter were there. I didn't know it would kill her, but I did it. And I've lived with the guilt ever since. He turned toward Inyobong now, his eyes glassy with tears. I only wanted to spend the time I have left with my daughter. I'm dying. I tried reaching out, but Uduak stopped me. The hall was dead silent. Inyobong looked like the ground had vanished beneath her feet, her face twisted in horror. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed into the nearest chair. No, this is not true, she whispered. But the truth was plain. The entire hall had heard. "I'm sorry, Chinasa," the man said, looking toward her. "Your mother didn't deserve what we did. She was kind. She was innocent." At that moment, the guards turned to Uduak. "Mrs. Uduak," one said firmly, "you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and obstruction of justice." Uduak tried to run, but the guards were swift. They cuffed her on the spot. Inyobong, still trembling, tried to speak, but no words came. With the eyes of the entire room on her, she burst into tears and ran out of the hall, her heels echoing behind her like thunder. The priest, shaken but steady, stepped back to the microphone. "Well," he cleared his throat, "now that all matters have been laid to rest, shall we proceed?" The crowd slowly stood and erupted into loud, heartfelt applause. Ibuka turned to Chinasa once more, and this time she smiled through her tears. A smile of peace, of justice, and of love. The priest raised his hands with a warm grin. "By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife." And as they kissed beneath the arch of white roses, the entire hall stood, applauding not just the couple, but the truth that had finally come to light.